Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We're here today with our very good friend, Jennifer Grant. Jen and I have collaborated on just about every project I've ever launched over the last few years. She's an amazingly smart, productive, and warm-hearted person, so I love working with her. Her new book is titled Consider the Birds, which is the first in a three-book picture book series from Erdman's. Jen's earlier picture book, Maybe God is Like That Too, won a gold medal from the Moonbeam Spirit Awards for excellence in children's literature and was named Book of the Year finalist in the Forward Indies Awards. To date, it has sold more than 30,000 copies. Her second picture book, Maybe I Can Love My Neighbor Too, was named a Junior Library Guild official gold standard selection. She's written several other books for children, including Finding Calm in Nature and What If I Can't Explain God. Jen has also written several great books for adults and for publications including Women's Day and Chicago Parent. For more than a decade, she wrote features, restaurant profiles, and general interest columns for Sun-Times Media newspapers. And she's also worked as a health and family columnist for the Chicago Tribune. She supported many other writers and editors as an editor and an editorial consultant. And she's spoken at many writers' conferences and retreats across the United States, including our very own Writing for Your Life conferences. Jen lives in Chicago and serves on the boards of both Open Books and The Secret City. We'll find out more about those in a moment. You can learn more at jennifergrant.com. So Jen, it's so wonderful as always to speak with you, and many congratulations on all of your wonderful work.
Thank you.
So is there anything else that you'd like people to know about you than what I tried to summarize there?
Um, well, you know, we were just chatting before starting this about different travels we've both done. Um, I think one thing that some of your audience will connect with is that I'm kind of in a phase of looking to the next part of life and moving beyond, and it's more than empty nesting, although one of our youngest lives with us right now, but kind of thinking about what I've been reading about those core pursuits. Have you read all the notions around as you move toward retirement, having five core pursuits that,
Oh, huh?
um, that are, it could be volunteering, playing an instrument. For me, I'm starting to see what my core
Hmm.
pursuits are. I
Hmm.
have no plans to retire. And one of the benefits of being a writer is I can just keep writing. Um, but I'm starting to do things like the last several months I've been doing strength training and I've been taking pottery classes and I'm starting to see what things are really generative for me. And so I am sort of on the lookout all the time for, there's a new stained glass studio in my neighborhood and I'm like, maybe I should do that, so I'm trying to kind of create a balanced life around now that so much of my time isn't, I mean, for such a long time, my life was really centered around parenting and that energy has to go somewhere, right? And all that planning and thinking and interacting with people, it's changed, so, it would more simply be said that I'm transitioning into empty nesting, but I don't really think of it that way.
Ah, interesting. Well, it kind of reminds me of when, all of us had younger children and we encouraged them to try different things,
Hmm.
to kind of see
Hmm.
which resonates with them that they want to pick up and be more serious about. So
Yeah,
you're kind
yeah.
of getting another opportunity to do that yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And travel is definitely one of those things.
Yay, yay. I'll vouch for that one.
Mhm.
So, before we get into your new book, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about the two organizations whose boards you're on.
Sure, sure. So the Secret City is an arts organization, and I was introduced to one of the founders of it years ago, and then really in March of 2020, this man, his name is Chris Wells, started for his community of artists. He had a lot of people who he worked with and that he knew as friends. But in March of 2020, he started a daily kind of TV show, but it was live on Facebook. So it was every day at 11 o'clock Central Time. He was in upstate New York. And he did this for months. He did it first like 6 days a week, then it went down to 5 days a week. Then as time went on, after a year or so, it went to 1 day a week. But what happened was he would present kind of like a show. And the show was he would show a piece of art from his home and talk about it. He would read an original piece of writing that he had written since the last show. Uh,
Wow.
he would read a poem, just, not that he had written, but he'd find poems. And sometimes the shows, would have a theme. But it was a real lifeline for me because
Hmm.
I was, and for many people, because, you're stuck at home. And the whole idea was he was encouraging creativity and
Hmm.
encouraging writers to write and painters to paint and musicians to write music and so on. And so through the course of that, I got to know him and would talk offline to him pretty frequently. And since then, the two of us have presented together at different small groups about creativity,
Hmm.
about writing. And he's also someone whose editorial eye I really respect. And so when I'm
Hmm.
starting a new
Hmm.
project, I'll say, I need an hour of your time, and this is a paying hour, not a friendship hour. And so we've done work with each other that way. So he asked me to join the board a couple of years ago, and my term might be coming up soon. But basically, it's an organization that really exists to get artists making art. And
Hmm.
so one of the things I do for them is I hold a monthly what's called creativity roll call, and it's a Zoom call. And people pop on and we talk about how we're going to spend the next 2 hours. And then we turn off our cameras and turn off our microphones, but we're there. So you see everyone's, name. And then in the last 15 minutes of this 2 hour period, people come on and say what they've done and what they've
Oh, wow.
created.
Hmm.
And so it's a way, some people collage during that time. Some people, do music. Some people write. Some people just do administrative things related to their artistic endeavors. But it's become this nice little community
Hmm.
of people supporting each other. And just even for me, if I know that there's a project or a story idea that I haven't gotten to and that's kind of been
Hmm.
on my list, I'll think, oh, I'll do it at the next creativity roll call. So that's the Secret City. They do mostly the organization, like so many nonprofits, has really shifted during this time since COVID. So they're doing more hyper local kind of salons for artists. And again, it's in a lot of the events, the physical in-person events are in upstate New York, and they've also had some in LA where this guy is from. Um, so that's been great. And I've met some really interesting people um, and I've been reminded of the importance in a difficult time of continuing to create and continuing to imagine, to write, to try different things and so on. So that's the Secret City. And then the other organization, and I might be at the end of my term on this. I was just thinking about this calendar year. I might be going off these boards, but it's called Open Books. And as you know, I wrote a chapter about this organization for How to Heal Our Divides.
Yes. Yes.
Was it part one or two? Maybe two.
Two.
Yeah. And Open Books was founded by a very dear friend of mine and her friend many years ago because they saw the need for LGBTQ kids to see themselves represented or their families represented in picture books. And so they started by um, first vetting and then curating a list of picture books that are donated to public school libraries. And they started in California, but now we've donated to schools all over the country. And for a while, I wasn't on the board, but I was just helping by reading books, kind of interfacing with different authors, figuring out what would be the finest books that could be part of this curated list that's donated. And that was fun, of course. Like I would get a whole big box of books and publishers were very eager to have their book chosen, right? Because
Sure.
they are guaranteed, thousands of sales and so on. But um, But then I joined the board, and it's been such a pleasure to serve on this. And in this new era of book bans and real kind of backlash against LGBTQ community, it's felt more important than ever to do
Yes.
this work, and
Yes.
had to do it differently. We've actually changed the way we are donating. Librarians want the books, and school libraries, of course, have limited budgets and so on. But it used to be that we would often, or sometimes anyway, hold events where we show, we delivered the books and took pictures, and it would be featured in local papers and so on. But we've had to stop doing that because of the rash of like book bans and kind of hate against, queer folks.
Hmm.
And so now we kind of have to kind of slip in the back door, and librarians want the books, and they talk about how these books really change a school's culture. Because not only the, gay student or whatever, not only is that person seen and acknowledged and feel like they belong because of having a book that represents them or their family, but their peers, they're like little straight peer folks, read these books and go, oh, this is a story where there's two dads in the family, just like my friend. And so it creates understanding and
Hmm.
empathy, um, and the emails that we get from primarily librarians, but also parents and others, are so heartwarming
Hmm.
because it's about creating real love and not just tolerance, but understanding. And that's been a real privilege to work with them. And that now they are, Open Books is doing this for the whole country. We've also changed the website a bit. We used to list the schools where we had donated, and now we just show general areas
Hmm.
because some parents were trying to steal the books or,
Hmm.
you know, stand up against getting the delivery made and so on.
Hmm.
So things
Wow.
have changed in this kind of difficult atmosphere that we're in culturally.
Yes. Yes.
Still a really life-giving organization. Yeah, and if anybody wants to donate to Open Books, you can look at openbooks.org. And so,
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Well, I knew particularly about that organization, so I really wanted you to have a chance to share it with folks who may not be aware of it. But
Mhm.
thank you for all the work that you've done,
Hmm.
for all of the organizations that you've contributed to. So another thing I'd like to touch on before we get to the new book were the two books that I mentioned in the intro, because they've been so well received and they're so, what seemed to be groundbreaking to me. Um, this is Maybe God is like that too, and maybe I can love my neighbor too. I don't, remember seeing books like that before, and I know that they've had a really strong impact on folks. So can you talk a little bit about how you came up with those books?
Yeah, sure. Well, for some context, when I was raising my kids and always going to the library and always buying them books, and we lived right down the street from the library, and we'd come home with huge stacks and read through them. But it was always very disappointing to me that any of the books that had any Christian content or religious content were either poorly written or, it looked not professional, they didn't look professionally illustrated, or the message was so heavy-handed and teaching ideas around God that I didn't want my kids to adopt. So so it feels good to have written some Christian picture books that are pointing children toward a loving God, and I hope encouraging spiritual curiosity in kids, and just giving them the opportunity to really wonder about, little kids are very curious about so many things, but they are also curious about the idea of a God, of a creator, and um, so it feels like a privilege to have written those books. And of course, I'm so happy that so many readers have enjoyed them. But it, the way the first one, Maybe God is Like That Too, came about was that our friend Naomi Kruger at Beaming Books, who was then Spark House, asked me if I had done some other editorial work for them. I'd
Mhm.
cleaned up some translations of picture books, and I had they did a book of prayers based on Psalms quite some years ago, and I had contributed to that. And so she asked if I would consider doing a book somehow related to the fruit of the Spirit.
Mm.
And I was delighted to do that. And I looked at what was out there, mostly kind of, tapping around on Amazon to see what other books about the fruit of the Spirit were, what did they look like? How did they handle it? And so many of them at that point just seemed like kind of dumbing it down for kids, like saying, and I don't know if this is literally, it's been years now, of course, but like a mom sitting at a table with a fruit bowl and, saying the fruit of the Spirit, joy is like this apple or whatever. And it just seemed not, not particularly compelling and not really honoring kids' more complex thought processes. Um, so I just started brainstorming different ideas about um, how a kid might relate to the fruit of the Spirit or to the idea that when we see joy, we're seeing something about God, and so, yeah, so that book is, depicts a grandmother who's raising her grandson, and she tells him that when we see gentleness, joy, self-control, God is there. And she invites him to look for that. And so that whole book, the refrain is maybe God is like that too. So he sees someone, he feels joy when he's swinging and he thinks, well, maybe God is like that too. And so that was that one. And then the second book in that series, Maybe I Can Love My Neighbor Too. I was writing in a time where I felt like love of neighbor in our country, and it's certainly true now as well, was taking a real hit. And so I wanted to describe what I hope, what I would like the world to be like, of people looking out for each other. And again, a child is looking for examples of people being kind and helping each other, and then decides that maybe she can love her neighbor too. And and that was kind of my response to what I felt was a really sad and it's only gotten much worse since then, but a turn in our culture where we went away from a kind of corporate sense of being in community with each other to all these divisions, as you know, um, and real mistrust and hate of others and of others who are suffering. So that was kind of my personal response to that. And so again, I'm happy that parents seem to connect with it, and even more so that kids do. And we can hope that, more and more people will start thinking in a way that some of us used to think was the norm, looking out for one another and looking out for those who are suffering or on the margins.
Well, I really think that those will prove to be timeless books, and
Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
that they already have helped a ton of kids, and will continue to do so.
Oh, thank you.
So, thank you for doing those. Just really outstanding contributions.
Oh, thank you.
So let's get to the new book now, finally. As I
Sure.
mentioned, the title is Consider the Birds, and it's the
Yes.
first of a three-book picture book series. So can you tell us what the overall series is about?
Yeah,
And
sure.
then,
All
how did
three.
that happen?
Yeah. Well, all three of these books, and I don't know if people watching can see this, but it's a really cute, it's a smaller size. It's like a smaller format. It's a square, it's probably what, 10 inches.
Yeah, that
It'll
sounds
be
about
fun.
right.
It'll be fun to see
Yeah.
these all three together. All three are illustrated by the same person, who's Juliana Sweeney, who is a fantastic artist. And I'm delighted that she was the person who illustrated these. But yeah, the first is Consider the Birds. And this is it's a younger picture book. Like I've written a number of picture books that the target audience is more like 5 to 7 or 4 to 8 or something. I'd say this is for younger kids in that it introduces number sense and counting and subtracting on a very like a young child level.
Okay.
So on the back cover, the publisher has put, at the bird feeder, we meet one blue jay, two doves, and then three chickadees ready for a feast. Then we spot 4 little wrens and a cardinal joins to make 5. Come count these birds with me. So it is a book that a parent or an adult could sit with a very young child and start, counting the birds together, tapping on the pages. Um, but there's the different elements that they can also get from it is learning about different birds, their behavior, the way they look, the way they sound. Um, and it also, and I'm passionate about this too, but it also draws kids and their adults' attention outside. And I do think that as much as we can sort of direct our gazes away from screens and more toward the natural world, the healthier we'll be. So it has the nature element, has introduction of different birds and their behavior and so on, and then also the counting. And then the second book is called Consider the Lilies. And that one is a book about colors. So again, for maybe a younger kid who is learning the colors or learning to read the words that represent the colors. And it also introduces a lot of different specific wildflowers. And then that book comes out in February of 2026. And then the third book is called Consider the Night Sky. And that one introduces things like the moon, constellations, stars, and also other things you can see in the night, like branches blowing in a tree, something closer to home that kids could all see as well, like leaves dancing in a tree or an owl or, things like that. But all 3 of them have kind of a gentle Christian message, which is like, consider the birds is inspired by Matthew 6:26 about we are cared for. And, there's we are cared for by a loving God. And all 3 actually have that message that, you are seen too, you are important too. And you can consider that all of nature is, something that we can find instances of God's care in.
Mm-hmm. So they're not really like follow-ons to the other books that you've read.
No, not at all. No, they're more like educate because my initial idea was that these might be board books. And so I was thinking very young children being introduced to, these birds, colors, elements of the sky, and so on. And they opted actually to go with these picture books. And I'm delighted that they did because they are it's produced in such a lovely way, which is really how Erdmann's books for young readers are. They are just really well made. So I'm so happy that they are not board books actually, but they are picture books probably for younger kids.
But did you envision it as a 3-book series from the
Yes.
beginning? Okay. Huh.
Yeah. So in my book proposal for this, I had the text of Consider the Birds, which is largely what we have here. And then I had, I thought a 3, again, because I was thinking about educational concepts in terms of these would be board books. And so I was thinking, what are the sort of things that parents and caregivers like to teach little kids about and talk about? And of course, colors and look at the moon and, those are stars and so on. So, yeah, I had the 2 other titles as possible follow-ons.
So would you mind showing our viewers some of the pages and
yeah, sure.
some of them, if you could?
Absolutely. I'll find. Well, and another element to this book is that we have kind of a naughty blue jay who's kind of selfish and naughty. So it starts with him and this is the first page. Hungry and loud, one blue jay dives down from way up high. He screams, "Eat, eat, eat," which is kind of how they sound, right? And then he flies away, and then other birds come. The next page is two mourning doves scout for seeds on the ground. Friends forever, faithful and true. They pair up for life 2 by 2. Anyway, and as the book goes on, then more birds come and then they fly away. And at the end, and this was my attempt to help those parents of very young children. At the end, the birds have flown away. And so the last few pages are, now they're all gone, each back to its nest. It's evening now, and the birds need their rest. And then it ends with the tie-in to that verse in the Bible. Consider the birds of the air. God gives them food to eat, friends to nest with, and their own songs to sing. You know what else is true? God loves you just as you are and takes care of you too. So my hope is that this will be the end of the day. A parent can read this and just, I remember being desperate for sleep myself and loving a book that encouraged and kind of triggered a child toward thinking about sleep. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what can happen here.
Cool, cool. Well, it's a beautiful book, and
Thank you.
very, very glad to see it come out. Uh,
Hmm.
so you said the second book is February of 26.
Right. And then the third, Consider the Night Sky, is in about a year's time. I think it's maybe August or September of
Okay.
2026. So
Okay.
we'll be
Very
out
cool.
by next
Very
fall.
cool. Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And since I know you're so productive, I have to ask you, even though, you've got these three books, are there any other projects, books or otherwise that you're
Yeah,
able to tell people about?
my agent is shopping two picture book ideas right now.
Cool.
Um, she actually checked in with me a few weeks ago to say that she had sort of hit pause because August, nobody's really working and
Sure.
publishing. So now that it's September, she's planning to send out to another batch of editors. Um, and uh, in addition to that, of course, I always have different ideas going. I'm always jotting ideas. But I'm also, and I might have mentioned this to you before, but I've been working for the last couple of years on a novel for adults. And so in my writing time, that's often what I'm working on. And I have a couple of editorial clients like I always do, and I do picture book critiques for people and then also just kind of shepherd someone through the process of writing a proposal or finishing a book. So I have a few clients like that.
Well, I know you always keep very busy and very productive, so it's always fun to see what's going to come out next.
Yeah.
Well, Jen, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you again for all the work that you've done for some of these incredible books. This one, Consider the Birds, is available now. Go check out Jennifer's website, jennifergrant.com. Jen, thank you again so much, and
Well, thank
many
you.
congratulations on all your work.
Thank you so much.